Mom kicked me out, called me a leech. I left. Months later, Dad demanded to know why his truck was gone. My answer? Silence. Hey there. Welcome to today's story. I'm so glad you're here. What's going on in your life right now? Whether you're winding down after a busy day or just looking for something to dive into, I hope you're ready for this one. Today's story is all about a character who faces a life-changing decision. Ever been in a spot where you felt like you're stuck between two paths and no matter what, one choice will change everything? Well, that's exactly where our character is right now. Stick around till the end to see how they make it through and what they learn along the way. And hey, if you enjoy the ride, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Let's get to 1,000 subscribers together so I can keep sharing more stories like this. Thanks for being here. Let's dive in. It was supposed to be a regular night, but everything changed in a single moment. I was 22, standing in the living room I'd known my entire life. The house, filled with memories of childhood and family dinners, now felt like a cage. My mom's voice sliced through the air, sharper than a knife, accusing me of being a parasite, a leech. "Just get out," she screamed, her face red and twisted in anger. "You don't belong here anymore." My father sat silently by the recliner, his eyes staring at the floor, as if he didn't even notice the chaos erupting in front of him. Jenna, my older sister, leaned against the wall, her lips curling into a smug, knowing grin. Kyle, my younger brother, muttered under his breath, "Good riddance?" kicking at the carpet like he couldn't care less. It wasn't the first argument we'd had, but this felt different. This wasn't just a fight. It was a door slamming shut. My mom had never been shy with her words, but this time, I knew she meant it. I wasn't just a disappointment in her eyes anymore. I was a burden, something she was done carrying. I glanced at my father, hoping for some sign of support, but all I saw was silence, the weight of it pressing down harder than any harsh word. He didn't even look up. I grabbed my bag, the one that had been sitting by the door, waiting for this moment. It was just a duffel bag, not much, but it had everything I needed. A few shirts, jeans, my old jacket, things that smelled like home. But home wasn't here anymore. I stepped outside, the cold night air biting at my skin. The porch light flickered above me, casting long shadows on the blue mailbox we painted when I was 10. The sound of the door locking behind me was like a finality I couldn't escape. I was leaving the only life I'd ever known. My old Chevy sat in the driveway, a reminder of everything I was leaving behind. I climbed into the driver's seat, the worn leather squeaking under me. $200 in my pocket, a half-empty gas tank, and a promise to myself I'd make it. I didn't know where I was going or what would happen next, but the one thing I knew was that I was done being invisible to my family. The first few days were the hardest. I crashed on Mike's couch, a guy from the auto shop who was more of a friend than a coworker. His apartment smelled like coffee and dog fur, and his pit bull, Rusty, snored louder than any engine I'd ever fixed. But it was a roof over my head, and that was more than I could have asked for. Mike didn't ask questions about what happened or why I was suddenly crashing at his place. He didn't need to. He'd been through his own rough patches. He didn't talk much about them, but you could tell by the way he carried himself. He always had that look, like he was just a little bit older, a little bit wiser than everyone else. And while he wasn't exactly a philosopher, the little things he said kept me grounded. "Life's not easy, kid," he'd say, half sipping his coffee as he looked out the window. "But it gets better if you don't quit. Just keep your head down and move forward." I didn't have much choice but to take his advice. Mike's place wasn't glamorous. It was a small, run-down apartment in a building that had seen better days. The kind of place where the walls seemed to close in on you at night. The bathroom light flickered every time I turned it on. And the kitchen sink, well, it had its own issues, leaking more than a faucet at an old gas station. But for now, it was enough. I had to remind myself that it was just temporary. It was a roof, and that was better than nothing. I wasn't exactly living the dream, though. I spent my days searching for a place to live, checking every gas station bulletin board, flipping through classifieds covered in grease stains. the ink smudged from years of use. The more I looked, the more I realized how far out of my reach independence felt. Apartments needed deposits, first and last month's rent. Things I didn't have. All I had in my pockets were a couple $100 and the hope that something would come through. But I didn't give up. I wasn't going to be stuck, sleeping on someone's couch forever. It felt like a step backward, like I had fallen into the cracks of life. I needed a place to call my own. A space where I could shut the door and feel like I had something real, even if it was just a small space. I had enough of being at the mercy of others, enough of feeling like a stranger in my own life. I drove around the town more than once, checking out any listing I could find. Most places were out of my reach, but I wasn't about to stop. I remember one listing in particular, on the edge of town, a tiny studio apartment. The building was nothing to look at, run down with cracked windows and peeling paint, but it didn't matter. I was beyond picky at that point. I needed a home, not a mansion. I needed something to make me feel like I was moving forward. The landlord, a grizzled guy in his 60s, met me outside. He shook my hand, his grip firm, like he'd been through 100 similar deals. His face was weathered, his clothes old but clean, and his eyes had a weary, knowing look to them. He didn't ask why I was looking for a place. He didn't need to. "You'll pay on time," he said, eyeing my work boots with a nod. "That's all I care about." I didn't even haggle. I didn't have the energy for that. I signed the lease, handed over every dollar I had, and got a key that felt heavier than I expected. The moment I walked into that tiny studio, I felt a strange mix of emotions. The room was small, cramped even, just enough space for a squeaky bed, a fridge that hummed too loudly, and a window that didn't open all the way. But it was mine. It wasn't much, but it was the first step towards something real. Something that belonged to me. That night, as I unpacked the few things I had left in my duffel bag, I realized something important. This was it. This was my new beginning. Sure, it wasn't much. Bare walls, a mattress that sagged in the middle, and the sound of the fridge buzzing like an old man's snore. But it was mine, and that made all the difference. The next day, I went to the thrift store to buy whatever I could afford. A secondhand mattress, a lamp with a dented shade, a few cheap essentials. The walls were bare, but I didn't mind. I was starting from scratch, and that felt like freedom. Freedom from expectations. Freedom from feeling like I was always letting someone down. I could walk into my apartment and know that everything inside was mine. My choices, my space. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control. I could build this place into whatever I wanted it to be, and the thought of that filled me with a quiet, steady determination. It was hard, yes, but I knew I had to do it. No one else was going to give me a handout. No one else was going to tell me I was doing okay. If I wanted something better, I had to work for it. That night, as I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, I tried not to think about the past. It was hard not to. The echo of Mom's voice, the looks from Kyle and Jenna, the feeling of being a burden, those things were still with me. But in that small, dimly lit room, with the hum of the fridge and the quiet of the night, I realized something. I was enough. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their understanding. This was my life now, and I was going to build it one step at a time. Knock knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story, but before that, make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. As the weeks passed, I settled into a routine. Work at the auto shop was steady. The clank of wrenches, the hum of engines, the camaraderie with the guys. But something still gnawed at me. Every time I looked at my phone, I saw messages from Kyle or Jenna or even Mom. They were all telling the same story. That I was the one who had walked away, the one who abandoned them. They painted me as the villain, ignoring the years I had spent fixing their broken pipes, paying for groceries, and taking the brunt of their expectations. It stung every time I saw those messages. At first, I tried to let it slide, but after a while, the words seemed to echo in my mind, bouncing around like a pinball. "You're a leech. You're selfish. You've ruined everything." They said it so casually, like it was easy to toss me aside and forget all the sacrifices I'd made. I kept wondering, how could they not see everything I had done for them? How could they so easily write me off? One day, while I was locking up the shop, I got a text from Kyle. Tom bailing on us and still owes Jenna for that phone bill. Real nice. My stomach twisted. I had paid that bill last year, covered their Wi-Fi, their groceries, and never once did they say thank you. But now Kyle was making me out to be the bad guy. It was like a punch in the gut, every single time. Kyle had never once acknowledged the nights I'd stayed up late working, just so we could have enough money to pay for the electricity bill, or the groceries I bought out of my own pocket to keep food on the table. And now he was calling me out like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I could feel the frustration rising, burning in my chest. I wanted to respond, to defend myself, to tell him everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed. But I knew it wouldn't matter. What was the point? They had already written their version of the story. They'd made up their minds. I was the villain, the bad guy, the one who had walked away and abandoned them. There was no arguing with that. I wanted to scream, but instead, I just put the phone away. My fingers trembled as I shoved it back into my pocket, the weight of it heavy. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, constantly pulled back into their narrative of who I was. The more I let their words get to me, the more I was giving them power over me. It wasn't just the text from Kyle, it was the accumulation of everything, the constant reminders that I wasn't the son or brother they wanted me to be. It was suffocating. I walked home through the dark streets, the pavement cracked beneath my boots. The night felt colder than usual, the wind biting at my skin like a reminder of everything I was leaving behind. My thoughts kept swirling, a never-ending loop of their accusations and my self-doubt. I tried to shake it off, but it felt like the weight of their words was pressing down on me, like a physical thing, suffocating me with each step. When I got home, I dropped my jacket on the floor and collapsed onto the mattress. The thin bed creaked under my weight, and I stared up at the mountain poster taped to the wall above me. It had been there since I moved in, a cheap souvenir from a trip I'd taken when I was younger. I had always liked the mountains. They reminded me of strength, of something unshakable. But now, as I lay there, they felt like a distant memory, something I couldn't hold on to anymore. I couldn't even tell if the poster was still inspiring or just another reminder of what I had lost. I kept hearing Mom's voice, telling me I was a leech, telling me I didn't belong. It was like she was still here, still in my head, still controlling my thoughts. I hated how much power she had over me, even from a distance. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had to remind myself of that every time her voice crept into my mind. I was no longer the son who lived under her thumb, who tried to please everyone just to feel seen. I had broken away from that. I had to, but it wasn't easy. The guilt, the shame, the confusion, those things stuck with me, clinging to my skin like a second layer. I wanted to let go. I needed to let go. But the pressure of their expectations was always there, lurking in the background, like a shadow that never fully disappeared. I had to let go of their version of me. I had to stop carrying their expectations, their judgments, their ideas of who I should be. It wasn't easy. Letting go felt like losing a part of myself, like cutting off a piece of my identity that had been so intertwined with who they thought I was. But I knew it had to be done. I couldn't keep living like this, constantly trying to meet their expectations and feeling like I was never enough. And yet, there was still a part of me that wasn't sure. What if they were right? What if I had abandoned them? What if, in the end, I was the one who had made the mistake? But I couldn't stay stuck in that loop forever. I couldn't keep questioning myself every time I thought about them. If I did, I would never move forward. So, I closed my eyes, letting the quiet of the night settle around me. I told myself tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow I would get up and keep going. Tomorrow I would take another step toward building the life I wanted. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was the only way forward. I couldn't keep looking back. For the first time in weeks, I finally felt like I had control, even if it was just over the smallest part of my life. But that was enough. It was all I needed. It was a quiet night when I made the final decision. I'd been paying for Dad's truck since I was 19, covering the monthly payments with the paycheck from the shop. I never questioned it. I never asked for a thank you. I just did it because I thought that's what family did. I convinced myself that if I kept giving, if I kept doing the things they never noticed or appreciated, they would eventually see that I was trying. But the longer I paid, the more I felt like I was being taken advantage of. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about everything. The unpaid debts of emotion, the years I had spent trying to earn their love by making their lives easier. It was never enough. They never noticed, and it wasn't fair. But now, as I sat in my tiny apartment, I saw it clearly. I wasn't doing this out of love. I was doing it because somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that my worth was tied to how much I could give them, how much I could shoulder. I saw it now, clearly and without the fog of guilt clouding my vision. They had been using me, and I had let them. I was never more than a tool for their convenience, always willing to sacrifice my own peace for the sake of their comfort. But no more. I wasn't going to be their fallback plan anymore. I stood up from the small kitchen table, my hands trembling slightly as I reached for my phone. The screen lit up as I opened my banking app. With a deep breath, I logged in and navigated to the automatic payment section. I hesitated, staring at the monthly payment reminder. The decision seemed so final, so irreversible. What if this was the wrong choice? What if I was ruining things for them? But then I thought about all the years I'd spent with their expectations constantly weighing me down. They never asked, they never said thank you. I had been stuck in this cycle, constantly giving without ever being allowed to live for myself. I clicked the button to cancel the payment. Standing at the counter, I stared at the confirmation screen on my phone. The words "payment canceled" flashed across the screen, and for a second, everything felt still, like the world had paused just for a moment. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done. The teller at the bank had asked me if I was sure about canceling the payment, and I had answered with more confidence than I actually felt. "Yeah, I'm done," I said, my voice steady, but inside, I felt a wave of nervousness. There was a quiet ache that settled in my chest, a worry that I'd somehow made a mistake. But it was there, this feeling, this sense of relief, like I was putting down a burden that had been crushing me for far too long. I walked out of that bank feeling lighter than I had in years. It wasn't just the weight of the money I wasn't paying anymore, but the weight of guilt, of obligation, of being treated like I was just a tool in someone else's life. The first breath I took outside felt deeper, like I had finally freed myself from something that had been choking me slowly. But there was still a tug at my chest, a feeling of uncertainty that I couldn't completely shake. What if Dad couldn't cover it? What if he lost the truck? What if they didn't understand why I did this? The thought gnawed at me for hours, as I sat on the edge of my bed in the silence of my tiny apartment. I looked around, seeing the bare walls, the old mattress that squeaked when I moved, and the lamp that flickered. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was the first place I had ever had control over. But even as I tried to convince myself that I'd made the right choice, a part of me kept questioning it. Am I really done with them? Can I truly walk away and live with this decision? The next day, my phone buzzed again. I'd been dreading it, but I wasn't prepared for the wave of emotions that hit me when I saw the name on the screen. It was Mom. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the answer button. "Hello," I said, trying to sound neutral. Her voice cracked through the phone, raw and emotional. "Tom, why? Why did you do this? Why did you cancel the truck payment? You're tearing this family apart. You've been the one holding us all together, and now you're just leaving us." I clenched my fist around the phone, the familiar pressure in my chest building up again. I didn't want to hear this. I had already made my decision. Why couldn't they see that I had given everything I had? And now I was empty. Jenna's voice piped up in the background, calling me heartless, accusing me of being selfish. I could hear the anger in her tone, and it hit me like a slap in the face. But instead of letting their words sink in, I took a deep breath. I had been fighting for too long. I had to let go. "I paid for the truck, the bills, the Wi-Fi," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You called me a leech and kicked me out. I'm done carrying you all." The phone went silent. No more accusations. No more words from them, just the sound of my own breathing, slow and steady. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of their judgments. The silence on the other end wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was a relief. I hung up, dropped the phone on the table, and looked around my apartment. It wasn't much. The walls were bare, the furniture was secondhand, and there were still boxes piled up in the corner. But it was mine. I had built this life brick by brick. I wasn't perfect, and I wasn't where I wanted to be yet. But I was in control. This was real. I was done trying to fit into their version of family. I was building my own now. A family that didn't need to be bound by guilt or obligation. A family that didn't make me feel like I was worth less just because I wasn't living up to their expectations. I didn't need to be their son, their brother, their version of who they thought I should be anymore. I was Tom, and I was making my own path. So, what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts, feelings, or any feedback you have. Drop a comment below and let me know what resonated with you the most. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you can catch the next story that's coming your way. Thank you for sticking with me through this one. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. See you next time.